The balance changes for Season 9 of Disney Speedstorm are officially here. We have the full community pit stop and patch notes layout, and there are a ton of crazy changes coming to the game that is definitely going to shake up the Disney Speedstorm meta. So without further ado, let's get straight into all of the new balance changes. They said, "Hey Speedstars, join us as we break down the list of racer balancing improvements coming to the game at the start of Season 9, jumping right into it with Racer Ariel. The passive speed boost received from collected artifacts has been reduced by 50%. This is a phenomenal change. Finally, Ariel's reign over the game is over. Ariel has been without a doubt the most broken and most complained about character since her launch back in Season 6, and I'm so glad they are making this change. Previously, Ariel had this really toxic playstyle where she would basically use the normal activation of her unique skill, collect all 4 orbs, and then basically never use the charged activation until the very end of the race. Hopefully with this change, not only will it reduce her insane top speed boost from collecting all 4 of her relics, but it will encourage people to use the charged activation more frequently and make Ariel's playstyle a lot more fun. In my opinion, I'm honestly really excited for this change, not only because Ariel is almost certainly going to fall out of the S tier and go down just a little bit where I believe she belongs, but I think it'll make her more fun to play and encourage more unique and rewarding playstyles with Ariel, which is always a good thing. Moving down, Racer Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph's top speed stat has been reduced. Now this is a very interesting balance change. One, I think Ralph definitely needs this. He is one of the fastest characters in the game, and subsequently one of the best characters in the game. His top speed stat is absolutely through the roof, has an incredible unique ability. Ralph has so many strengths, and so I think he definitely deserves a top speed nerf. However, in-game, Ralph's top speed was reduced by well over 1,000 at the highest levels, and yet for some reason his top speed stat, like when you actually go inside the game, his top speed is around the same range. I believe it is slightly lower than Sully's now, so I believe his top speed stat was reduced a little bit, but not nearly as much as it says it was. I don't know, it's a weird change. The way it's implemented in-game, something's bugged about it right now. However, there are a lot of characters that have bug top speed stats, unfortunately, which is really sad. Like all the Inside Out characters, the top speed stat in game really isn't reliable. You have to go into a private track or an actual game and test out their top speed to get an accurate number, in my opinion, which is really unfortunate. But regardless, Wreck-It Ralph definitely deserves a speed nerf. Unfortunately, there aren't very many other speed nerfs in this balance changes, but we'll talk about what I think of the balance changes as a whole at the end. Moving on to Sergeant Calhoun, the number of psi bugs breached spawned during the normal activation of her unique skill has been reduced by 1 across all star levels. The size of the psi bug breaches spawned during the normal activation of her unique skill has been reduced by 15%. I am very down for this. Sergeant Calhoun has been a very powerful racer, definitely high A tier, arguably S tier since her launch, and her Psybug breaches have been absolutely obnoxious to play against. I'm totally okay with Sergeant Calhoun being a strong character, but it's one thing to be strong and it's another thing to be unfun to play against, and Sergeant Calhoun was definitely on that line. Arguably crossing over the line. It's just not fun when you're trying to drive and there is an obstacle that you simply cannot avoid, and sometimes Sergeant Calhoun's Psybug breaches would literally cover up the entire track and be basically unavoidable, so reducing their size and reducing how many there are is definitely a welcome change in my opinion. And honestly, Sergeant Calhoun is a strong enough character with a good enough kit that I don't think this change is going to absolutely destroy her anyway, so overall just a very positive change in my opinion. Moving on to King Candy. King Candy's manual boost bar will fill upon successfully stunning a rival racer or destroying an obstacle with either the normal or charged activation of his unique skill. This is a very interesting change for a lot of reasons. One, I think it is a great change. King Candy is arguably the worst character in the game. I think he's the worst character. His top speed stat is absolutely abysmal. It's so bad. He's so slow. And his kit, it's fine, but it's not great. And what really bothered me is that King Candy is a trickster, but he has a very brawler-oriented kit. His kit's all about, stunning, knocking back people, targeting the racers in front of him, and it just felt really weird that he was a trickster, but with the, sort of a brawler ability. But this balance change almost fixes that because it essentially gives him the brawler passive of whenever you stun someone, you fill up your manual boost bar, but it only applies to his unique skill. So King Candy's still getting Paladin, I believe he has Bomb as his primary skill, so when you stun people with bombs, it's not going to be as good as Brawlers, but it does give him this really unique advantage of sort of being a trickster brawler hybrid where he can stun people with his unique ability, fill up his manual boost bar, and then maintain that boost using his drift boost. Now, I don't think this is going to make King Candy very much more viable by any means, because boost wasn't really King Candy's problem. If you have King Candy leveled up, like in level 30 or 40 or above, you can pretty much be boosting the entire race. Like, it is insanely easy. His boost stat is so high, and he's a trickster, so as long as you somewhat know how to drift and you have King Candy at a decent level with decent crew members, you're going to be drifting the entire race and subsequently boosting the entire race, and it's not very hard to do that. And so getting more manual boost for stunning things, it might help him out a little bit, but it's certainly not going to make him the most viable character in the game by any means. Moving on to Racer Disgust. Disgust has a very similar change to King Candy. Her manual boost bar will fill upon successfully hitting a rival racer or destroying an obstacle with either the normal or charged activation of her unique skill, and the speed at which her memory orbs travel during the normal activation for unique skill has been increased at Racer Star levels 2, 3, and 4. This is very, very good. I love these changes for Disgust. I love Disgust kits again, but I think she had the same issue of King Candy, where she's a lightweight trickster who has a unique ability that feels a lot like a brawler ability, but she cannot take advantage of that. And once again, she has the same new, basically passive that King Candy has, where she is sort of a trickster brawler hybrid now, where if she stuns people with her unique ability, she will actually get manual boost for that. However, Disgust also suffers the exact same fate as King Candy, where she doesn't necessarily need more manual boost. Sure, it's not going to hurt her, but again, her boost stat is so high considering that she is a lightweight trickster that, stunning people and getting manual boost for it, it's not going to hurt her, but it's not going to help her a ton just because she gets so much manual boost already. So I'm excited to see how this change pans out for both King Candy and Disgust. Certainly an interesting one, but it's not going to make them the best characters in the game. At least I don't think so based off of first impressions. And Disgust's other balance change of her memory orbs traveling faster, I gotta see in game how fast it is, but definitely a welcome change and might make the normal activation of her ability a little bit more viable. Moving on to Racer Minnie Mouse, the amount Minnie Mouse dashes forward during both the normal and charged activation of her unique skill has been increased by 50%. Solid. Minnie Mouse definitely needed a buff. She has been one of the worst characters in the game, honestly, since her release. Minnie Mouse has never really been great. She's kind of been a bad racer for a long time now, so I will absolutely take this change. Just a nice, solid, clean buff to Racer Minnie Mouse. Moving on to Eve. Eve's top speed stat has been increased. You'll love to see it. Eve is one of the slowest and worst characters in the game, with just an incredibly clunky kit that doesn't feel good to use, and especially not for defender class. I would have really loved to see Eve get the passive that Disgust and King Candy got. I think that would have been really interesting, because unlike Disgust and King Candy, Eve actually does need a lot of help with her manual boost. Being a defender, it is, relatively hard for her to maintain it, and so that would have been really interesting to see, but a top speed buff is nice as well, and definitely something to make Eve a little bit more viable. Moving on to Mike Wazowski. Mike Wazowski's top speed stat has been increased. You love to see it. Mike has a very powerful unique ability, especially in team mode. However, he has fallen off a ton the last couple of seasons, and that's largely in part due to his absolutely abysmal top speed, so hopefully this will help make him a little bit more viable. Moving on to Racer Mulan. Mulan's manual boost bar will fill upon successfully stunning a rival racer or destroying an obstacle with either the normal or charged activation of her unique skill. Same thing for Disgusting King Candy. I love this. It's a great way to, give a buff that isn't strictly more top speed. It makes Mulan sort of a, lightweight trickster brawler hybrid, which is very cool. Gives a lot more meaning to her unique skill, which felt like it was designed for a brawler class and given to a trickster. However, Mulan is a lightweight trickster, and that means she has an incredibly high boost stat, and that means it's incredibly easy for her to get and maintain an infinite boost level simply by drifting. So again, while this change is going to help her a little bit, it's not the most amazing change in the world, and I think Mulan's placement on the tier list and her viability as a whole in the Disney Speedstorm meta is going to be about the same. Of course, I could be wrong about all these changes, but I'm just thinking in my head, King Candy, Disgust, Mulan, they're all boosting a ton. They don't really need this change necessarily. It's going to help a little bit, sure, but it's not going to be as good as, like, say, a top speed buff would be, which is what all these characters are incredibly lacking. Moving on to Racer Shang. Shang's manual boost bar will fill upon successfully stunning a rival racer or destroying an obstacle with either the normal or charged activation of his unique skill, and the duration of the charged activation of his unique skill has been increased by 2 seconds across all racer star levels. I don't know why Shang got these balance adjustments. This is absolutely crazy. Shang was already an incredibly solid character. His top speed stat is through the roof. He's a shield defender, has a unique ability that can stun people and keep him immune for a ridiculously long amount of time, and then they go ahead and give him these two buffs. Shang, after these patch notes, is going to be without a doubt S tier. If you have not leveled up your Shang yet, definitely go and do that and go just dominate ranked multiplayer with him. This could honestly propel Shang into the top 5 characters in the game, in my opinion. Because unlike Mulan, King Candy, and Disgust, who all got the exact same patch note as Shang, the manual boost, basically brawler passive, but just for your unique ability, they were all lightweight tricksters who didn't have incredibly high boost stats. Shang is, sort of a mid-weight defender with a relatively high top speed stat and not the best boost stat in the game. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And so this is going to help out a ton and help Shang keep his manual boost for even longer than he was able to before. And I'm really, really excited to see how good Shang is after this change, because in my opinion, if they wanted to make Shang a super broken character, this is the exact change that he needed. It's going to make him super, super strong, being able to maintain manual boost for way longer than he did before. And on top of that, the charged activation of his skill is now going to last way longer, 2 additional seconds, giving him more immunity and more opportunities to stun people, which means more manual boost now. Absolutely insane. And Shang is going to be really, really good this season, I think. So gotta try him out in game, but I have really, really high hopes for him after these balance changes. Moving on to Stitch, my main man. Stitch's top speed stat has been increased. You love to see it. I am loving this change. Stitch's top speed stat got a massive buff. He's now the fastest lightweight in the game, and in my opinion, one of the best lightweights in the game. I think he's definitely solidly up in the A tier after this change. They increased his top speed stat by so much, you guys. He's way faster than he was before, which was definitely Stitch's biggest weakness. So as a Stitch main, I love to see this change, but I feel like he was overtuned just a little bit in my opinion. Moving on to Hercules. Hercules will receive an additional 8% speed boost for 2 seconds when touching the trail from both the normal and charged activations of his unique skill. I don't know if the 8% is going to be super noticeable in game. I definitely gotta try Hercules out, but Hercules is already a relatively strong, solid A tier character in my opinion, and so I think he'll definitely be one of the best characters in the game. Probably not top 10. I don't think this change is as impactful as like Shang's, who I think is around the same power level as Hercules before this patch notes. I don't think it's that amazing, but definitely a buff that I don't think Hercules really needed, but will definitely make him a lot better for sure. Moving on to Meg, the duration of both the normal and charged activations of her unique skill have been increased by 2 seconds across all racer star levels. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, Meg has a pretty bad unique ability. Neither of them are super impactful. At least she can stay immune for longer with the charged activation now, but like Meg, I feel like she just has a really clunky kit that has way too much manual boost going on. She has the boost power up, she can drift, her boost stat is insanely high, she gets manual boost from both her normal and charged activation. But it's a buff. Maybe Meg will be a little bit better, but I'm not foreseeing her going up on the tier list a whole ton or being a lot more viable because of this change. Moving on to the last balance change, Elizabeth Swan. The amount Elizabeth dashes forward during both the normal and charged activations of her unique skills have been increased by 20%. I love this change. Elizabeth Swan was nerfed pretty heavily a couple seasons back and has been pretty, mediocre to bad since then. So hopefully this change will make her a little bit more better while not making her unique skill as obnoxious as it once used to be. And there you guys have it. Those are all of the balance changes for Season 9. Now, as a whole, I think every change on this list is for the most part positive. Again, I don't think Shang needed those buffs. I think the changes to King Candy, Disgust, and Mulan, while they are super cool and I love what they're trying, I don't think they put them on the right characters. I don't think this is the impactful changes that those three relatively, weak characters, I don't think it's what these guys needed, And I am really disappointed to see the cherry picking with top speed increases and decreases. In my opinion, 2/3 of the Disney Speedstorm roster could benefit from either a top speed nerf or a top speed buff, because all of the heavyweights are just way too fast and dominant over the meta, and while some midweights can compete, they don't necessarily always, and so it's nice to see characters like Wreck-It Ralph get nerfed, but it's really weird to see characters like Beast, who has the exact same top speed and in my opinion is better than Wreck-It Ralph, characters like Hans, who has by far the fastest top speed in the game, and I think is without a doubt, now that Ariel has been nerfed, the best character in the game, and it's not even close. No one's going to be able to keep up with him anymore. I think, these characters, Buzz, his top speed's been untouched for a while. There's a lot of characters with ridiculously high top speeds that just aren't being touched, and in my opinion, they are completely controlling the S tier and the meta of the game. Disney Speedstorm is starting to revolve around how well your character can play around these heavyweights. And yes, there are some other factors. For example, if you get like the new Arby's track, or if you pull Kawaii or another really, tight map, those characters are going to do a little worse. And, maybe Stitch with his newfound really high top speed and also super high handling stat can, slip by and be viable in some situations. But ultimately, in a competitive setting at, level 40 to 50, top speed stat is really the only one that matters once you get to like level 40 plus, which I think is a fundamental problem with Disney Speedstorm and one that needs to be fixed. And then going on to the top speed buffs, Eve, Mike Wazowski, and Stitch all getting top speed buffs is good, but what about the rest of the lightweights? Minnie got a buff, but what about Mickey? Mickey desperately needs a top speed buff too. King Candy desperately needed a top speed buff. Hortensia, I could go on and on from about all the lightweights in Disney Speedstorm just not being touched with their top speed. And so while these balance changes are, in my opinion, mostly positive, I don't necessarily object to any of these balance changes, except maybe Shang. Those are kind of weird and out of place compared to everything else. But besides that, I think these balance changes are honestly really solid. They kind of cooked here, but there's not enough. The top speed issue is still prevalent, and while this is going to shake up the meta, move some racers up, move some racers down, ultimately at the end of the day, top speed is king, and it has not been dethroned with this patch note. And so I hope going forward they find a solution to this. Obviously, of course, they could just take, the third the top 10 to 20 fastest top speed characters and reduce all their top speed, and take the top 10 to 20 lowest and increase their top speed. But that's kind of, a lazy solution, and that's ultimately what they're doing. They nerfed a bunch of characters' top speed last patch, and they buffed a bunch, and it feels like we're just going to keep getting those small incremental changes until eventually everyone is just essentially a mid-weight character, which is just kind of a poor solution in my opinion. And eventually, yes, it will work, and the game's top speed stat situation will be a little more balanced, but I would like to see just an overhaul to the top speed stat in general, just to make it less impactful to the game, because it is really dominating the meta. I would love to use some crew members who don't increase top speed for once. I think that'd be, incredible. Crew members have essentially become obsolete. There's a lot of strategy that can be implemented into Disney Speedstorm with choosing which crew members you should use, boosting stats versus boosting special skill levels, and it could be a really fun, unique mechanic to Disney Speedstorm. But right now, everyone just puts on the epic crew member and then top speed crew member, and that's it. There's no variation in competitive metas right now at the high ranks and high levels. So hopefully we see changes to that sometime in the future, but overall, positive balance changes for Season 9 just doesn't address the core issues with the meta and balancing in Disney Speedstorm. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know what you think of the balance changes in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, everybody.